All right, I want to now start and welcome everyone to our work session, April 7, 2026. And the first item here is the University of Iowa Student Government updates. Welcome, USG.
Hello, tonight we will be presenting a resolution to you all that was recently passed by our Student Senate. But first, a couple of small announcements. One being that our elections just happened and Emily Cross and Matiana Edmonds will be serving now as our president and vice president. So we're very excited for their admin. Speaking of which, April 21st will unfortunately be my last city council meeting in this position, and Eden will be officially taking over. So that's something to look forward to.
Yes and no.
Okay, so now we will be presenting a resolution recognizing April as MENA American Heritage Month. This was written by our Senator Dominic Eastman, contributed to by Director of Justice and Equity Gupta and Chairwoman Davis. Community sponsors for this resolution were the Iowa Democratic Party Arab Caucus, Iowans for Palestine, and Iowa City Action for Palestine.
To start, whereas the Middle Eastern and North African MENA region encompasses a diverse array of cultures, languages, religions, and histories, including but not limited to communities from countries in the MENA region, and whereas due to the history of and ongoing colonization in the region, this MENA American Heritage Month should be inclusive of any people belonging to an indigenous ethnic group from the MENA region, including but not limited to the Amazi, Arabs, Assyrians, Medan, Tuaregs, Coptics, Druze, Jewish people, and the Bedouins. MENA Americans have historically faced challenges in representation, visibility, and inclusion. Recognizing their heritage helps foster a more inclusive and equitable society, and whereas MENA Americans have roots in the Midwest dating back over 130 years, MENA Americans have played a prominent role in shaping Iowa's culture and religious landscapes. Iowa is home to significant landmarks such as the Mother Mosque of America, the oldest purpose-built mosque in North America, and St. George Orthodox Church, both greatly shaping community life in Iowa. And whereas April has been recognized annually by the federal government and Lynn County as a time to honor and celebrate MENA American heritage, encouraging communities, schools, and institutions across the country to promote awareness, understanding, and appreciation of MENA histories and cultures as shown by statements from the White House and a proclamation from Lynn County, which we did send out earlier if you want to read more for that.
Okay, so action. Therefore, the University of Iowa Undergraduate Student Government formally recognizes the month of April as Middle Eastern and North African American Heritage Month in order to honor the rich histories, cultures, and contributions of MENA communities, and commits to annually promoting this recognition through outreach avenues such as social media. Therefore, be it resolved, the undergraduate student government urges the University of Iowa and the Iowa City Council and the Johnson County Board of Supervisors to recognize April as MENA American Heritage Month. And as Eden mentioned, I sent out the resolution a little earlier to hopefully all of your council emails where you can click on some of the hyperlinks. We just read some of the more pertinent excerpts from it, but there's many more whereas statements, and we really encourage you all to read that. So thank you.
Thank you both. All right, we're going to move on to item number 2, clarification of agenda items. Anything from the formal agenda?
Yeah, 1 second. I think I want to have like one item for service consideration. I'm just looking for the item number.
Okay.
About the Summit Street. If somebody have in front of them, just help me.
I'm looking. Are you talking about in the consent calendar?
Yes, on the consent agenda, calendar.
Is this the one you're referring to?
No, the Summit Street.
6P.
6P.
Oh. Summit.
Thank you.
Okay.
P as in Paul.
Okay.
Yeah, 6P. Okay.
6P. Okay.
Yeah, I want to have that out for separate consultation.
Okay.
And also, that's it.
All right, so anything else? So we'll have in our consent agenda, item 6P, for a separate consideration? Hearing nothing else, we're going to move on to our information packets. Item number 3 on our agenda, March 12th. March 19th. March 26th.
I think it's March 26th is agenda, or hold on one second. Yeah, like IB1, isn't that the, I just see here for July, we always have for July we have one meeting, but I see that on the 20 we have the joint entity meeting. I think we talked about why we're having one meeting in July, and since the joint entity meeting is like something like we must be there, or also we can have somebody to represent us, right? If we cannot do it, we can just ask the city to have somebody.
Like
Because
staff.
I don't think I'm gonna be there, and yes, I thought we're gonna have only one meeting. We're not gonna have any another meeting, but something like the joint entity meeting is something that we must be there. Either we just have only one meeting in July, or maybe I can, if somebody else is not going anywhere, I can just maybe ask the city to represent me, like the staff to represent me on that meeting.
Yeah, generally, as long as there's multiple counselors there, we're okay. There's no formal votes at those joint entities meetings, so it's more informational sharing. But staff will always be there to support. So I think you're okay
right.
missing that one.
Are we expecting anything on the agenda that you were?
Nothing anticipated at this time.
Okay.
Generally,
Okay.
the different governing bodies will look at that in 3 weeks
Sure.
or so before that meeting.
That sounds good.
April 2nd. Oh,
Just a small,
go ahead.
while you're looking for whatever yours is, this is IP9, and it was actually the Senior Center Annual Report. And it's a shout out, but it's wonderful. That they had a 3.5% membership increase over the year. And that's really significant. So I just wanted to call that out because the work that's going on over there with a small staff, just the vision that's happening and that's occurring, the kinds of events that are happening are really amazing, and that the membership has increased is fantastic. So I just want to say kudos to everybody at the Senior Center and Latasha Deloach in particular for the leadership that she's showing.
I was going to talk about the joint entities meeting for April 20th, the agenda items. I'm wondering, was this a call to potentially put things on the agenda, or?
yes.
Okay, and there's currently nothing on the agenda.
Well, each community have conversations amongst themselves and determine if they want to add an item
Yeah.
on the agenda. And so now this is just our opportunity for council to have that discussion.
Yeah.
And to, if someone has a thought that they want to promote, that thought go amongst us and we go from there.
Yeah, so, and I guess I just don't particularly know. We talked about it a little bit at MPO, JC, but just referring to the conflicts that have arisen regarding there being more of a University of Iowa hospitals and clinics presence in North Liberty, and our paratransit and seats operations going to North Liberty, and how it's causing some frustrating outcomes for people because there's not good enough scheduling, and since the destination is North Liberty, it's in their purview about how they pay for and yada, yada, yada. So I was maybe thinking that could be a good joint entities topic.
Does CAMBUS participate in joint entities, or the university, anybody from the university? I mean, they're kind of they're the progenitor of all of the problems, and they should probably have us be participating in this conversation. I agree with you. This is
Yeah.
a big problem for the community.
Are they at joint entities or just MPO?
Just MPO.
Okay.
Because of CAN bus and funding.
So, I mean, if you have any suggestions on if we should just try to keep those conversations at MPO or,
I think the MPO are just offline, elected to elected with
Okay.
those community peers. I can certainly help bring the university into the fold if you
Okay.
want to work with me on that.
okay.
And is there some value in just having conversations in general about seats, the fare-free, one way, because I think just information could be great to share at the joint entities meeting, but
Yeah.
Yeah, if we can ask also North Liberty for an update. I do think they have some plans since they're ending their contract with the city of Coralville for fixed route transit. I think they have some ideas for what may be replacing that, but I don't know. I don't know what that is.
And we
I
also-
don't know if we can say we think North Liberty should present.
well, I mean, we could request. And then the other is the county, so they have their on-demand. So it could just be a transportation theme
Yeah.
that we're just asking people to give some updates so that we look at somewhat fragmented services, but also,
Overlapping.
overlapping county services.
If it could rekindle some regional transit discussions,
I like
even maybe.
that.
I mean, I'm okay with that. I'm not entirely sure who or what we would be asking of like our staff in order to do that.
Yeah, so is council amendable to kind of those three requests?
Yes.
Yes?
Sure.
So then we would just ask staff to reach out to the county, to North Liberty, and to the MPO, and just ask them to do a presentation, and we'll see where we go. And if they don't agree to it, then they just won't be on the agenda.
Okay. What are we asking? Like an overview of their public transit offerings? Is that what you're looking for?
Throughout the county, correct. Okay. And not long and drawn out, just informational for everybody there. For seats specific, we would want to include, how that one-way fare happens, so that people just have that update as well.
I guess to be more specific, I think this is what Councilor Wyline is talking about, and that would be that there are large buildings that are recently constructed that are not accessible via public transportation, specifically the North Liberty Hospital. And what is our role as the city of Iowa City to help our citizens of Iowa City get to that new facility, either for employment or for medical treatment? Similarly, we no longer have a community college in Iowa City, and so how do people from Iowa City access community college that is not on a bus route in Iowa City? So maybe narrowly focused on just healthcare and education and access for Iowa City residents? I don't know. Is that too narrow or just a broad update?
I don't think so, because seats, the county, not what North Liberty is doing at this moment, but
Well, and I think at the MPO meeting, Greg from the university said that CAN-bus to the North Liberty Hospital is an on-demand service. Does anybody remember? I meant to follow up with him. But just even some information on like what are the options there. And Oliver and I did this youth town hall last Friday, and the teenagers who were there were talking about not understanding like the East Side Loop being the only bus that goes along Scott Boulevard. And, so I do think kind of like a transportation overview. I realize that's super broad for staff, just to, if we just say that, but,
Yeah, I think with this meeting, you want to make it relevant to all the participants, right? So all the participants aren't necessarily going to be focused on how Iowa City residents move
That's what
around.
I was thinking.
The disconnect between origin destination and going between cities, I think, is legitimate. I'm just not sure I think it's a good discussion point, identify the problem, but I'm not sure that there's going to be solutions laid out at the table for you.
And Councilor Moe, I think just something about like, regional medical or
Yeah.
educational transportation, on-demand
Yeah.
transportation, something like that. Whatever we think would be a good, topic title.
Yeah, yeah. Is that enough to work with, or is that really mushy?
Yeah, that's enough. We
Okay.
can do it.
You're like, please stop talking.
All right, so we will move on in our agenda. Anything else
I
from
just
April?
wanted to put a pin in the, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go right
No,
ahead.
no. Go ahead. I guess because we are still on IB
Yes.
2nd, April
Yeah.
2nd, yeah.
Yes.
I do have a kind of, because it sounds like, well, this sounds like a good topic. I would like to, again, sort of put a pin in for a session where we get the Food Network folks, so that we can get precisely that, an overview of what this coalition is doing, because simply contributing more to food banks is not really sustainable in terms of the need. And so I know that this network has been looking at different solutions and sort of trying to figure out what it could be, but to simply be able to lay out the problems and what the different kind of upcoming potential and likely obstacles for food sustainability in the region are, I think is something that they can both address that would be really, really informative, and then also talk about the work that they've been doing. So I would love to see that at some point. But again, I haven't actually talked to them in a little bit, so to say, hey, can you do that on a dime might be a little bit tricky, but maybe that could be something I can chat with them and say maybe like I'm really pushing for July, right? And that we could have that as a request potentially. So.
That sounds good to me.
Yeah, I want to go to IB4, which is, city memo from the city manager office about housing. And I want to just highlight the current Iowa City Housing Authority waiting list count. As of April 2026, the housing choice voucher waiting list have 2,503 application, and the public housing waiting list had 1,503. Just to remind us that we still need affordable housing options.
Thank you.
All right. We're moving on to item number 4, which is the Iowa City, Think Iowa City annual update. Welcome, Josh.
Thanks, Mayor. Let's pop this open. I don't. All right, we cut the lights on that a little bit, Jeff, or whoever. There we
Thank
go.
you for being so patient with us.
Oh,
this
no
morning.
worries. No worries. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for the opportunity to once again provide an annual update on the work of Think Iowa City and the Iowa City Area Sports Commission. Sorry, Mayor, you have to hear all this again.
All good. All good.
My name is Josh Schamberger. I'm president of both organizations, and I'm joined here today by a few from our team. Nick Pfeiffer, who's our public affairs director, and Angie Jordan, who is known to everybody in this community. So pleased they're both here. So just to give an overview of what's been happening here at our organization, I'll just kind of go through it and then be happy to kind of answer some questions. As a reminder as to who we are, Think Iowa City and the Iowa City Area Sports Commission advance the economic vitality and quality of life for residents and visitors as Iowa's premier destination. That is our mission. We do that work through 5 different market segments, primarily is where we invest our time, energy, and resources. The first being individual and group leisure travelers, so essentially tourists that are coming here in as individuals traveling across I-80 or in groups through weddings or other parties like that, reunions. We spend a lot of our time in the next 2 bullets there, conferences and meetings and amateur sports, and we'll kind of get into that. Equal amount of time in arts, culture, and special events. And then quite a bit of our other efforts go into quality of life, focusing on our community, not just those visiting our community and trying to better that. And so those are most evident over the years through things like the Iowa River Landing, the North Liberty Centennial Park, and recent development out there. Way back in the day, the Terry Trueblood type work and partnering with Iowa City on riverfront crossings and Iowa City Downtown District and things like that. These next area, we primarily as an organization, we lead through convening people and organizations across the region as a central hub for collaboration, prioritizing cooperation over competition, acting with agility, and identifying promising ideas and launching proof of concepts faster than traditional institutions. And that certainly was evident during the COVID era when we were able to pivot away from our mission and really serve the community most in need a little bit faster than government. And then certainly we take very strongly our role as serving as the region's brand authority and tracking our community's evolution, promoting its authentic identity to potential visitors. This is our board of directors. Our current chair, he's not happy, but he gets the big face photo on the slide this year, is Jake Moore, who's an executive with Green State. Mayor Teague is the representative through our bylaws from this government authority, but we're joined by governments in Coralville, North Liberty, University Heights, and Iowa City, who ultimately are our stakeholders because we were born in 50 years ago, close to 50 years ago, in 1980, when cities of Iowa City and Coralville both passed a hotel-motel tax. So all of our funding comes through revenue we generate on our own or hotel-motel tax dollars that are passed through, and that's our primary market, is sustaining and growing hotel-motel tax revenue. In Iowa City, we receive 25% of the revenue is passed through to our organization, and that is the same in all communities. In Iowa City, the rest of the hotel-motel tax funds are funded through our support Parks and Rec, and then the public safety efforts here is the way the council here has chosen to spend those dollars over the years. So I tell folks, we're not property tax based, so unless you're in trouble and you're sleeping in a hotel room, you're not really contributing to our budget. We do all of our work through these three primary buckets: innovative sales and marketing, authentic placemaking, and intentional community engagement. To get a little bit overview of each kind of bucket. Last year in sales and marketing, which is our primary work, bringing people here, making them feel welcome, and then sending them home. Maybe they decide to stick around and learn more about McKinsey and Greater Iowa City and want to move here. But last year, in 2025, our team serviced 67 different organizations, conferences, meetings, sporting groups that welcomed over 93,000 visitors to town. And those visitors spent just over $18 million while they were in Iowa City and Coralville. We closed 2025 with a record number of future bookings, so it was definitely one of the strongest years for things that are to come. And so when you combine the future bookings with those still to be realized, most of our bookings, when we book an event, it's going to be here 2 to 3 years from now. That's typically the cycle for bigger conferences, meetings, and sporting events. There are certainly some exceptions. But when we combine all that, we're anticipating future conferences and meetings, about 61 different conferences and meetings, 42 different sporting events and tournaments. All of that translates to just short of 146,000 future visitors, just short of 40 or just over 41,000 room nights, and 38 million in future spending. Sports are obviously a very big part of what we do here. We see it all the time, realize it. Obviously, this bottom left photo, we just celebrated this past November the first of a 5-year contract for Iowa City to be the host of the annual Girls State Swimming and Diving Championships. So we're pretty proud of that partnership and partner with not only the City of Iowa City, but the University of Iowa and the Wellness Center. And it was fun to kind of turn that facility as pink as we can get it. They enjoy their pink ribbons and pink rollouts and all of that for the Girls State Tournament. So we are home to a record number of state championships, to the point to where we're getting a little criticized at a state level as to why we're getting our maybe more than our fair share. But we receive that because of, I think, the large work that our sports commission does in exceeding expectations and providing an experience that these girls enjoy when they come here, and boys. We have about 7 girls state tournaments and 3 boys. And recently, a couple weeks ago, we were awarded our 10th state tournament. So next year, we will become the new home, not surprisingly, of the annual Girls State Wrestling duels. We already host the state tournament, so they'll have a dual tournament that kicks off next year. Cool. We are also the sort of deft hand behind Bike Iowa City. That's a brand we developed and continue to run to this day. It runs as an independent sort of marketing strategy, and we actually contract with Liz Hubing and others in our community to continue to advance the Bike Iowa City efforts. Not surprisingly, we continue to leverage as much as we can this Wrestletown USA brand. We truly are Wrestletown USA. There's really probably three things that Iowa City, I believe, from a tourism brand can lay claim to across this planet. The first being certainly our literary writing history here and the Writers' Workshop, and being a UNESCO City of Literature. No matter where you're at in the world, if you're anywhere close to the sport of wrestling, you have heard of Iowa City, Iowa. And that's another one. And then I think the other one we're really proud of and we try and promote is that relationship we have with women's athletics. And Dr. Christine Grant, in many ways, laying claim to being one of the birthplaces of Title IX. Mm-hmm. AI is certainly changing the world, and it's no different in our world in sort of this information age. While we continue to face-to-face efforts, sales efforts, and strong relations continue to drive business, we're seeing AI change the landscape. And so we're tracking that, and like many across all our peers across the broader information economy, we're experiencing sustained and exponential growth across website and social media platforms. Last past year, we recorded just over 7 million impressions and 136,000 different interactions with visitors looking for information on Iowa City, Coralville, and North Liberty. Authentic placemaking, it's important to be able to clearly say who we are and represent as a community. We continue to work towards, we're able, better supporting subgroups in the area, neighborhoods, interest groups, and culture groups, and developing their unique identities and placemaking within our community. And intentionally learning more about what residents think and look for, especially newer neighbors migrating into Johnson County. After the meeting, I'm sure Angie will be happy to stick around in all the big projects she's working on as it relates to a community needs assessment and where we can support more in our particular area of focus. And then certainly leveraging our core pillars that I just kind of spoke to, our arts, athletics, that writing heritage, that wrestling heritage, developing compelling stories around it and messaging those. Much like we supported North Liberty with the Hy-Vee Center out at Centennial Park and Coralville and Iowa River Landing with Extreme Arena, this past year we spent a fair amount of time in University Heights. They recently polished off, and we supported the development of a multi-use trail plan that will be taking place on 36 acres to the north of University Heights and just to the south of I guess it would be Carver Hawkeye Arena. So that plan is being put into action right now. They recently approved that. We also have recently begun work and sent out an RFP to partner with the Johnson County Fairgrounds to do a deeper dive in there and identifying where opportunities exist there and what needs to improve out there in order to take advantage of that particular attraction, how to better it for the betterment of the larger community. And then Nick has been working with Josh Moe and Brent Smith up in North Liberty and many others to make sure we stay in touch and on everybody's radar as it relates to the Burlington Street Bridge replacement study and everything else that Nick is leading on behalf of Pillar One with the Better Together 2030 initiative. We recently won a big award at the state. We didn't know we were winning an award. It was kind of a surprise, but we started a brand new series that highlights all of the uniqueness of the culinary scene in Iowa City. It's called Blend. We talked to one of our friends, Nate Kading, into kind of playing the role of Guy Fieri. And if you haven't seen it, here's
the Iowa City area is a full blend of history, stories, characters, experiences, and last but not least, great food. I'm Nate Kading. You might remember me from kicking the football for the Iowa Hawkeyes and the San Diego Chargers. I grew up here and moved back to raise my family after my playing career was over. Through this series, I want to share with you the eclectic mix that makes my hometown such a unique place to live and to visit. This is Blend, an Iowa foodie experience.
That was a trailer for the first episode, which focused on a couple restaurants and I believe a duck egg farm just south of here. We already came out with a second episode, which was a little bit more focused. We actually took Yuki Mura, the Japanese star hockey player, and talked about different culinary cuisines in the community, and he went up to Solon. And then we have a couple more being filmed right now, but it's being received very well, this sort of culinary tourism video series that that we're kind of investing in. It was already recognized a few weeks back at the State Tourism Conference for being one of the more innovative ideas. Really, Nick and Monica Nieves-Hirsch on our team have done a great job leading this. Oh, didn't mean to start that again. Intentional community engagement, as I think I mentioned last year, maybe 10 or 15 years ago, I would have said it's not really important that the community know what we do. I mean, at the end of the day, our job is to put heads in beds for hotels. And so it's far more important that you all know the return we're providing on the pass-through hotel motel tax dollars and how we're trying to continue that. That really, more and more COVID kind of proved that was the wrong way to think of things. The more and more we have become engaged in our community, the more and more opportunities have come about. A perfect example of that is Sunday. I appreciated everything that recently happened with Sunday downtown, and I hope everything continues to move forward there. But I remember, just because of some of our work with Better Together, he came knocking on my office one day and said, "Josh, I want to tell you about this new festival I want to create in Iowa City." And I thought, this is great. I love everything about it. What year are we doing it? And he's like, "We're going to do it in 60 days. And I'm like, "You're insane. That is never going to happen." And so he said, "No, we can do it. We have all the right people." So we invested, and it turned out incredible that first year. And obviously last year was even better. And so we're excited about year 3. And all of those things wouldn't happen if we hadn't made an effort to be more intentionally engaged in the community and having the community learn more about us and the efforts that the resources that we have to kind of advance some of these quality of life festival community engaging opportunities. These are a few. Obviously, I just mentioned Sunday's the African Festival of Arts and Culture. Refocus Film Festival is something we were the initial sponsor for. It certainly ties in great, the Adaptation Film Fest, to the UNESCO City of Literature. North Liberty's Fire and Ice. Down here in the middle was a partnership and something we did out at Wilson's Apple Orchard. And then our ongoing efforts to continue to support things like Summer of the Arts and UNESCO City of Literature. We also started a new series last year, which has been received very well, and we're going to continue to expand that. It really highlights and promotes local artists and what they're doing in the community. This didn't quite play there, so it's a shorter clip, but this was one of our series. There's a few of these already out if you go to the Think Iowa City YouTube page, and this was one on Carlos Maldonado.
I go to a lot of remote places where I won't see anybody for hours. My name is Carlos Maldonado. I am a full-time artist living in Iowa City. I am a full-time painter specializing in plein air painting, which is painting on location outdoors. It's really cool to kind of just be in nature and study the area and the location and be in the moment. I am a very forgetful person. Like, I can't even remember what I ate for breakfast, but when I look at a painting that I did in plein air, I can remember the temperature, the bugs, all these things that I'm paying attention to in the moment.
Go back to that. So I encourage you to take a look at a few of those videos and learn more about the artists that are in our community, kind of celebrating our community and promoting our community. The other initiative that we've been really proud to be a part of is really under the leadership of Betsy and the entire team of the Iowa City Downtown District, but we've been really excited to kind of co-fund this Iowa City Free Week, which celebrated its second year, and we have a lot of hopes that that's going to continue to explode, and are proud to be good partners with the Downtown District on that. As Mackenzie already mentioned, and you all are well aware, this was really under Mackenzie's great leadership and Nick Pfeiffer and the amount of hours those two spent together strategizing and getting the vote out. But we were super proud to co-fund the efforts of Lost this past year and help lead the campaign that was really, truly record-breaking on a number of fronts for Iowa City, Coralville, and North Liberty. To get close to 80% on all three is pretty remarkable. Mm-hmm. What does all this mean? So I wanted to end with a couple of the dollar signs, the return slides. Last year, visitors to Johnson County spent $714 million while they were in county. These are people that do not have spent money in this town, that do not have zip codes or from this town or this county. They spent $104 million in local and state taxes, and they spent $6.5 million in hotel motel taxes. For every $1 of hotel motel tax that was received through all those conferences and meetings and sporting events that we brought to town and are here, we brought a return of $18.60, which is a pretty healthy return to the community, and that's just from conference sports sales efforts. This is a tracking of hotel motel tax over the last 10 years. The blue line represents Coralville, the black is Iowa City. The green, when I did this to North Liberty, no offense to North Liberty, but they have one hotel. You can see they've slowly grown. And then orange is University Heights, which also has one hotel, but that shows the difference between flags and location with those two particular cities. So obviously 2021 was COVID, so we had a pretty good dip there, but been pretty pleased with the continuous growth of hotel motel tax and what that's been able to do for the cities with alternative revenue, in addition to the pass-through for us to continue to build.
Just to clarify, that does not include short-term rentals like Airbnbs?
It does.
It does?
Yeah, so Airbnb hotel motel tax is collected by the state. It's part of the rate, and then the state throws that they send it back to the collecting jurisdiction.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
So any short-term rentals, I believe, used to be under 31 days, but then the city of Clinton got that changed to 90 days.
Okay.
So what's next? There's a few big things on the horizon. I was telling Jeff and the mayor on a text the other night, it hasn't been announced publicly. I mean, I guess maybe it has, but the Savannah Bananas game is sold out. It's sold out in about 10 hours. So 2 full games, 130,000 people will be coming to town July 3rd and 4th, which will be terrific. And then just before that, though, that should say July 3rd and 4th, not June, my apologies. Just before that, we're super excited. In just about a month, we will be welcoming and we will be host to the 2026 Pan American Championships. And we have been working very hard. Nick can tell you all about all of the embassies around South and Central America that we've been visiting with our delegations to work through visa challenges. But I just got back from Panama a couple days ago where the U-17 Pan Ams happened, and I met with every federation and Nick's list to make sure they're all checking the boxes, but just to reiterate how excited we are to welcome all of our friends from South and Latin America, and certainly our friends from Canada, to Iowa, and how we aim to really roll out the red carpet and make an example of how we should be welcoming our visitors from different parts of the world. So a lot of those countries will start to arrive. They'll have about 320 people from roughly 25 to 30 countries. Several of them will arrive as early as April 20th. Argentina and Ecuador will be here for about 2 weeks before training and practicing. And these are the best men and women wrestlers in all of the Americas that will be here. So they will wrestle for 4 days, and then they'll head back to their homeland. It's not just sports. There's a lot of big-time conferences coming. In June, downtown Iowa City will welcome the largest conference to ever come to Iowa City, Coralville. It's the National Criminal Defense College Conference. The mayor played a huge role in us landing this. We beat out Indianapolis. We are the final 2 cities, which is pretty remarkable that a city like Iowa City is going to beat out Indianapolis. But there'll be 4,000 hotel room nights booked for the month of June associated with just this conference. And we booked them on a multi-year, so they'll be back next year as well. And then just a month later over in Coralville, we'll welcome a group called the Catholic Daughters of America. We booked several years ago, and they will have about 3,500 room nights all over town for their annual conference. So this next few months are going to be pretty busy between now and the fall, and a lot of hotel rooms of visitors will be rolling in to enjoy Iowa City.
Very, very good job, Mayor. I'm also just curious when it comes to competing for conferences like that, if you will. Like, I didn't know it came down to 2. I'm just kind of curious about that process. I mean, did you just go win them over with your amazing personality, or? Well,
you should tell the story, Mayor, about what happened.
So, well, so to make it short, so I did a video just to highlight our community, and I think it was undoubtedly that we were the best choice.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to send any of you the video. It's far more than just he did a video. And he also did a video for Savannah Bananas. And he's been
In
great.
a yellow suit.
I want to see that.
Well, that's what the Savannah Banana guys wear,
yeah.
right? So
Yellow top hat.
our mayors all do a great
Yes.
job, and when the mayors can't do it, council members step in. But these welcomes are really, really important when these groups come to town, and they think I can guarantee you the mayor of Indianapolis probably didn't do a welcome for that video, but we got the mayor.
Josh, when you're trying to recruit or attract a conference to come to Iowa City, or the region, do you find that there are gaps in our physical infrastructure, like venue size or proximity of things that, from a planning perspective, we should be considering?
Yeah, I mean, certainly we have our market. There's certainly Big Ten health and medical and education conferences that we're just not going to get because we don't have the number of hotel rooms attached to meeting space.
Yeah.
The really only venue we have for conference space in that particular market that is pretty flexible and large enough would be the one in the Iowa River Landing. But that doesn't mean that that's just Coralville. There's a ton of conferences I could show you that are booking overflow hotel rooms, and they love to come to overflow hotel rooms in downtown Iowa City, particularly some of these groups who went to school here and want to relive the Ped Mall.
Yeah.
The dental college is a perfect example of that when they have their conference here. So there are pieces of business we miss out. The graduate can be a little challenging in terms of just meeting space because they just have the one ballroom, which is great. But in order to flip it for conferences, you need to send the people somewhere, maybe for the lunch, and then they come back. But the team there really does a great job with what they have. Hilton Garden Inn is exceptional for a certain size conference. So the one thing that's super exciting is the university's pivoted a little bit and is getting more and more interested and aggressive in allowing their spaces to be rented. A good example of that happened recently is UBC. We had a Universal Ballet competition, which was national. We had 600 ballet folks headquartered out of the Hilton Garden Inn just a couple weeks ago and use Hansher. And so to be able to have Hansher available for those sort of events, to be able to use Klatt Recital Hall for a reception when we have the CDC College is really opening up some doors. So Pete, and whether it's Pete and his partnership there or the university needing to find alternative revenue, which is part of it as well, and opening up some opportunities, it's been really good for Iowa City.
Great, thanks.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you all very much.
Thank you. Yes, great job. All right, we are going to move on to item number 5, which is an update on creation of our nonprofit affiliate organization of the Housing Authority.
Hello,
Welcome,
good evening.
Tracy.
I'm just going to start this for Dave, if I can. Okay. Tracy Heisch with Neighborhood Development Services. I'd like to introduce Dave Bright. He is with the Iowa Nonprofit Resource Center, and he's an adjunct professor for the College of Law. He'll walk us through the creation of a Housing Authority affiliated nonprofit that would operate exclusively for the benefit and support of the Housing Authority. As you'll recall from previous conversations and presentations, our current public housing program is not sustainable. We are operating out of reserves, so every year we're going into our reserves, which were developed about 2 decades ago when we sold public housing properties. That's not sustainable for the long term, and what we're getting from HUD is that it's not a good picture regarding increased operating or capital expenses for the public housing program. So we're working with a consultant, Quadell, on a public housing repositioning strategy. Whatever final method we move towards that repositioning, the one thing we have to do is we have to create a nonprofit affiliate. And I want to emphasize that creating this nonprofit does not commit the council to any specific repositioning path. It doesn't approve a submission to application to HUD, and it doesn't transfer the sale of a property to the nonprofit. All those decisions have to come back to you for approval. So I'm going to have Dave walk you through the proposed bylaws and articles of incorporation and highlight the government structure, explain how the Housing Authority will maintain as much control as we can. And also a secondary benefit that we didn't realize when we were going down this path, but creating that nonprofit affiliate also allows us to apply for workforce housing tax credits for the Summit Street project. And that deadline's June 10th, so we're kind of working under a time frame to apply for those funds. So Dave.
Great. Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. Just a little background, just sort of on who we are, just to introduce myself. I work at the College of Law, the Larned A. Waterman Iowa Nonprofit Resource Center. We were founded in 2000 by Sandy Boyd, have been in operation since then, and we work with nonprofit organizations and individuals around the state on all manner of projects, formations, dissolutions, conversions. We work in three main areas, education, engagement, and research. We're really good at education and engagement. We have no time for research, so I won't speak too much to what we do in that regard, but we do a lot of what we're doing today. We help people talk about how to form an organization, why they might need that organization, why maybe they don't need that organization, and help them work through those steps. And so with that in mind, to give you a little, well, our standard, you can't have a lawyer in the room without a disclaimer. So while we're here talking about legal things, obviously the city has counsel, and so we wouldn't be serving in a counsel role, although we are attorneys. A little background on our process. We previously worked with Tracy on some projects, Wright House, Stream City, the MDC of Iowa City, and she contacted us about the idea of forming a nonprofit to hold and manage the city's affordable housing assets. So we had an initial meeting with Tracy and the legal staff and other people from the housing staff to sort of talk about what was involved, where this idea was coming from. Subsequent to that, we met with representatives from Baker Tilly and Quadell that just kind of gave us background on the conversations that had taken place so far and what would be involved from our end, and also kind of gave us some familiarity with other municipalities who had been through this process. And so we could kind of, learn from other people's experience. We're a big fan of going out and seeing what have other people done, relying on that, rejecting that, obviously, as, your situation varies and differs from other locations. And we reviewed the documentation that Baker Tilly and Quadell provided, looked at some case scenarios that they had from other municipalities to just kind of generate some ideas and thoughts about how best to approach it. We also reviewed some formation documents, specifically articles of incorporation and bylaws from an entity in Minnesota and in the Twin Cities, to be specific, that seemed most similarly situated to where we were and what we were doing. And then we put together draft articles of incorporation and bylaws for discussion and review purposes with the staff. Eric and I discussed those drafts, finalized them for review and discussion with staff and council at this work session. And so that's kind of where we are, obviously, today. With respect to the documents, just some sort of basic overview of the process for this. So if you haven't gone through it before, you can get a little familiarity with it. Assuming the draft articles of incorporation are approved in a final form by the city, they would be filed with the Secretary of State of Iowa. That would create a separate, what Iowa calls a domestic nonprofit corporation. And for purposes of definition, domestic means you're either from Indiana or you're from India. It doesn't matter. You're just not, you're within Iowa. If you're domestic, if you're foreign, you're from any other jurisdiction. And then we also prepared draft bylaws. Those would be adopted by the initial board of directors upon incorporation of the corporation. So that would be sort of the second step in your formation. One thing that's important to note is that this would be a nonprofit corporation in Iowa. It would not get tax exempt status. That's not required for these purposes. The organization could be positioned for that if so desired, but since no application to the IRS for tax exemption is anticipated at this time, we didn't include the additional requirements within the formation documents that you normally would if you knew you were going to go on and form a tax exempt. Some basic content from the documents, and you can see these in the copies of the documents that we provided. The initial board of directors would be comprised of 2 members of the city staff from the housing department and the mayor pro tem. Those are essentially by virtue of the office, right, or ex officio positions similar to the positions that Josh was describing with respect to that board in his presentation. The initial board, those 3 people would recruit and vet and identify members from the private sector who would serve on the board. And we think that there would be some advantages in having those private sector members on the board who could bring experience in development, construction, other areas that would be relevant to the operation and the governance of this entity as it managed and held these assets. The other key advantage to having members from the private sector would be that in the event that this organization wanted to contract with the city for the management of these properties, it could do so, but it would have sufficient members on the board who could vote on that matter and not require the people who work for the city or the mayor pro tem, who obviously have existing relationships with the city, and avoid any potential conflicts of interest that way. So it would give you some flexibility as you were negotiating and working with the city perhaps to provide services for management purposes of those housing assets. So very quick overview, obviously, in terms of what we've done, but you do have the documents available to you, the articles and the bylaws. If anybody has any questions about those, I'd be happy to answer them. If you haven't had a chance to review them, certainly you could reach out and we could, discuss them by email, or you could contact me at a future date if you'd be interested in learning more. But certainly I'm happy to take questions if anybody has any at this point.
Yeah. I would like just to ask you if you can again talk about the board of directors selection. When you say like the mayor pro tem and the 2 other staff, they will recruit 3 other community members. Is this means those 3 going to replace the initial mayor pro tem, or this is going to be 6? It's not going to be 6 board members that if I count all of them, and I know that it have to be like an odd number maybe. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Just tell me a little bit about that.
Sure. We wouldn't anticipate having members from the private sector replace those 3. They just serve as the initial directors when you're starting the entity and when you, say, have your initial meeting to adopt bylaws and take other initial formation steps. So they would be the first 3 in place who would then help to identify additional members to join them in serving on the board of directors, but we wouldn't be replacing them. And those 3 roles, the city staff and the mayor pro tem, since they're ex officio, it would be by virtue of the office. So as those people, moved on, retired, did whatever they did in their careers and weren't in those roles anymore, the next people to inhabit those roles would serve in that same capacity. So you would always have those representatives from the city serving on the board, but you would also have members from the private sector serving on it. And to your question about the number of them, ideally you have an odd number to avoid a deadlock. You can also build in deadlock provisions if you need to in your governing documents to address that. I wouldn't say that the board size is fixed at this time, and we started with a certain number just as sort of a place to start, but that's certainly something that can be considered as we continue with the process.
Do you mean like the majority of the board member will be community member?
Well, I mean that you would have people from the city who would serve on the board by virtue of their positions with the city, and then you would have people from the community that you would recruit, ideally with some experience that would be relevant to running a nonprofit, that's focused on affordable housing. So you would want to look at the community and see, find people who would be qualified to serve and make sure that they came with appropriate skill sets and backgrounds.
But still, the majority is not city employees.
The majority, no. I mean, the city would have 2 people on the board at all times that are staff, and then they'd have 1 member of council.
And you said you already take this example from another city, like the Twin City in Minnesota and all those. Can you tell me a little bit about the board for those examples?
It varies. Some of them, if they have a housing authority, like say like how we have a planning and zoning commission, if they have a housing commission that serves that similar kind of function, oftentimes they would have everyone who's on that commission automatically serve on the board of that nonprofit. So the boards would be essentially identical. Others would have a mix of staff and members of the council. There really wasn't any set kind. It just kind of varied from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, and I think a lot of that was attributable to what kind of system did they have in place. So if they had that commission, they would rely on those people to serve. If they didn't have a commission that was appointed by the city council or other governing body, and they relied on staff in that regard, it was staff, and then in many cases, a mix of staff and council members or elected officials, I should say.
And the majority is not the city employees.
I don't recall seeing one where a majority was city employees. I mean, it's possible that there are, but I didn't see any that had that kind of structure.
And what's wrong with making the majority city employees?
Well, I wouldn't say there's anything wrong with it. What you're trying to avoid is any potential conflicts of interest, that if you have people from the city who are serving on the board, and then let's say they're contracting with the city to provide management services, you wouldn't want to have people who are working in the department that would provide those services and also serving on the board of directors for the corporation that's contracting with the city for those services. You'd want to have enough directors on that board who are disinterested. In other words, they don't have an obligation to the city by virtue of their employment or by being an elected official. So it would give you flexibility and freedom. It doesn't require that you contract with the city. It just gives you the ability to do that. And obviously in this instance where you're talking about housing stock that's been managed by the city for some time, there's a strong argument that those may be the best people to manage those entities. It doesn't mean they have to be, but it would obviously give them an advantage because of that history.
But those people who are non-city employees are in the board just like volunteer people who are going to give advice. But at the end of the day, the city is the one who doing everything, right? Because those people consider like the board is just like as a governor, but the actual people who do the administrations and everything will be the city, right?
Well, it could be. I mean, it doesn't have to be. I mean, you could contract with someone else to provide the management services of the housing stock that's owned by that nonprofit. I just think the city is a good candidate for it. And so if you're thinking about opening yourself up to as many options as possible in terms of who you could have manage those assets, you wouldn't want to create a situation where you couldn't engage the city because the only people who serve on your board are people who work for the city, and then how do you figure out, who votes to approve that, right? Everybody's got a conflict of interest. They couldn't. So.
Yeah, I agree with you that the city will be the best option to manage those because we want to make sure that we do everything like in good quality, even management. But what if the people who are not a city employee are the majority and they decide that this is not going to be the city doing it? And now we have to go by what they said. Because they are the majority and they are the governing body. So I just like a little concern about that, if it could happen too. But now the city is the one who wanted to become a developer. Now the city is the one who wanted to provide a quality, affordable housing. And that's why when I say I feel like maybe more city staff, which is the majority, would be great. We still need to hear from the public. We still need to hear their opinions. But I feel like that the majority should be that. But I think that's a council kind of discussion. I'm sorry. But
Sure.
yeah.
Oh, no, you're great questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you mind if I?
Thank you.
So what I will say is we have 10 minutes before 6 p.m. We're going to put a pin in this, and we'll come back after the formal session to continue this discussion.
But Mayor, before you go on, I forget to ask you, also I want to pull out the 6K
Sure.
as a separate consideration also.
Great.
Thanks.
All right.
I'm wondering, Mayor, whether you need Mr. Bright to stick around or have council ask the questions that they need. I have been speaking with Mr. Bright
Sure.
about this. So I'd
I
be
think
able to
we
answer
have
some.
city staff or yourself.
Yep.
They can probably answer majority of the questions. Are we comfortable with that? Just having Eric?
If you can, I think if you can, we're not going to push you, but I think if you can, you should stay.
Okay. Quick question on timing, because I know you had said this is somewhat time sensitive. We want to use it for Summit, but we're not voting on this tonight.
You are not. We
So
would-
if we have questions you can't answer and it comes up on a future agenda, we'll be able to ask.
It
at
is our
that
hope to
time.
bring something to you to take action at your next meeting on the 21st.
So if there's something you can't answer
Okay.
tonight, we can get the
Okay.
answer between now and then.
That's right.
Sure, I
Yes.
wasn't know that. Thank you for
Great.
Sure.
All right.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank
so
you.
We're,
you don't need to stay.
we are going to be in recess from our work session until after our formal meeting. All right. We will reconvene our work session, which is, today is still April 7, 2026. And we are at continuing the conversation from item 5. And I know that it was just comments from council at this time.
I think he was trying to say something.
Oh,
We left it at that.
We were talking about the
Non-profit.
the nonprofit, the establishment of the nonprofit, and I think my questions will be able to be answered probably just by Eric or down the line. I'm forgetting the gentleman's name, but our
David Bright.
David Bright, yes.
Yeah.
I was basically just going to ask more about, the makeup of the board to make sure that at the end of the day, if we're talking about the nonprofit that is going to control the city's municipal units, I want to make sure at the end of the day the city has the final say. Just to talk through all of that, that's the only thing. But we don't need to keep us any longer. Those are conversations
Yes.
that we can have in the future.
Especially if that's not something that you need direction from us right now.
That actually gets to my question. So the next step was the Articles of Incorporation, correct?
Yes, so they would, in order, we would want to incorporate, and Mr. Bright will take care of that for us. And then those three initial directors, again, the Mayor Pro Tem, Tracy Haichu as NDS Director, and Rachel Carter as Housing Authority Coordinator, would serve as the initial directors. That will be a challenging assignment, as that will be a working board. And they would then recruit at least two other I'll say non-city individuals to serve on the board. I say at least two because if those three are ever conflicted out, and this is one of the things that Mr. Bright was addressing, then you need at least two left to take action. So we need at least 5. We would maybe shoot for 5 and exactly 5 so that they can both take action when it's needed, but still have 3 city people out of a 5-person board.
And then the board would do the rest of like creating the bylaws and that sort of, the rest of that work would come after the article, it's been incorporated.
Right. My apologies. I thought that the draft articles of incorporation and bylaws were to be included in your packet. I'm told that they were not.
They're not.
Those are documents that Mr. Bright and I have already worked through. So that's already ready from our perspective. But to answer your question, yes, the bylaws would be adopted by the directors.
Is the number of directors determined in the articles of incorporation or in the bylaws?
In the bylaws, it says at least 5.
Yeah, I'd be interested in us saying 5. It could always be amended,
Sure.
but I think establishing it at 5 would be
Yeah, would be great.
good.
And 3 required to be staff.
Right. The
2 staff, 1 council member.
Oh,
Right.
sure.
And those are ex officio, and so those are, I'll say, permanent, if you will. Whoever fills those 3 roles would serve on the board.
Got it.
You
Yeah.
mean it's still from the community at large only 2?
Yes.
It's still like city majority kind of.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what we
Yeah,
want to see.
and I'm also just a little bit confused about the how it would be a conflict of interest if, like, we're the conflict of interest where this,
Sure.
like, the city staff and the city councilor can't have the nonprofit work with the city.
Sure.
I'm
There's a
just-
couple of examples I can think of.
Okay.
As you're aware, at some point, the property, the units, the residential units in question are going to be transferred from the city to the nonprofit. We envision they'll be sold to the nonprofit, or at least the terms of that transfer will need to be negotiated. They'll need to be negotiated between the nonprofit and the city. And so that's a time when the mayor pro tem, for example, and even the 2 city employees that we've mentioned would be conflicted out and all likelihood. The other example is, I think it is envisioned at present that it would be likely that the nonprofit would hire the city to manage those units, basically to hire the city staff, not on an individual basis, but pay the city to employ those folks who are already doing that work to keep doing the work. That was what Mr. Bright was. Now, again, that's ultimately up to the nonprofits board to decide, but that's kind of what we envision would be likely.
And
But you mean, go ahead.
would we envision the city folks working on the city side and recusing themselves from the nonprofit? So they wouldn't, it's not like they couldn't participate on either side of those transactions, correct?
Well, when you say the city, I guess I haven't given this a lot of thought, but it's possible that the mayor pro tem that serves on the nonprofit board would have to recuse from the city vote as well because of, at present, her conflict with the nonprofit board, but the other 6 council members would still be in.
I'm sorry, speaking about city staff, I don't want to preclude in the current iteration, Tracy and Rachel from participating on the city side in the development of what we're talking about that would be conflicts. They can
I
participate
see.
on the city side and then recuse themselves from the nonprofit board.
Right. I guess it depends on the work that you're talking about. I mean, obviously, Tracy and, oh, good, they're still here. I just had to look to my right.
They came back.
They did, okay. They would obviously be continuing to do their work here at the city. And again, I'm presuming that the nonprofit would contract with the city in order for that work to continue to be done. Obviously, they need to keep doing the city work. If that comes up at the nonprofit level, you know, hypothetically that they're dissatisfied with the work that the city is doing in some fashion, well, then obviously they'd have to recuse. If your question is, can they do, I'll say, city work in managing those nonprofits despite their role in the nonprofit, I guess I'd have to think about that a little bit.
I just don't want to
think
limit
it'd
their
be workable.
ability to act on behalf
Sure.
of the city.
Yes, exactly.
And on this,
Go ahead.
on the same line of sort of conflicts of interest and being able to vote on this board, can they participate? Can the ex officio members participate in dissolution?
The dissolution of the
If this does not
nonprofit?
work and we want to jettison from it, can they participate in dissolution?
Well, I have not thought of that. I suppose the question would be why, if their motion, if the motion to dissolve was related to, again, some dissatisfaction with the city or a broken down relationship with the city, you know, something like that, then maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Sorry, I don't want to poke holes, but
Yeah, no, I mean, let's talk it through now. Better now than later.
And then I maybe expanding on my concern about a little bit about liability, like
Yeah.
the city has some immunity, and then when we become a not-for-profit, we lack that. If we create this organization, do we create multiple organizations for each unit, or does the umbrella organization create those?
Yeah, so ultimately that would be a board decision, and I say that because I don't want to be cute. I mean, I represent the city. I do not represent the nonprofit. I would envision that the nonprofit would be getting separate legal counsel and separate accounting and separate, probably all of that, likely with the exception of the management of these units, as we've discussed. I would imagine that a nonprofit would take steps perhaps like a private landlord in creating separate LLCs so as to silo their liability. That is, if they, let's say have a trip and fall case in front of one of their apartment units that results in a large judgment, it would only be that one LLC that could be affected as opposed to the remainder. That's the decision that the board would have to make down the line. As you and I have discussed, one of the disadvantages, of course, is that the city has some sovereign immunity from the Municipal Tort Claims Act in Chapter 670. Presumably the nonprofit would not, but probably in the balance of considerations versus the cash flow that is the significant advantage of this, I clearly would be in favor of moving forward, I would advise.
I really would like to understand again, because to your questions, Council Burgess, that for when it comes to conflict of interest, I want you just to repeat again what that means. Is this means like, for example, if something that as you said, the city is doing it, and the city have to recuse themselves, where the staff have to recuse themselves. If we're talking about the 5 people now.
Sure.
The 2 staff and the mayor pro tem, 3 of them have to recuse themselves. That's what you're saying?
Well, again, if the question is, let's say, a contract with the city, I would say, yeah, they would probably, I mean, again, ultimately, that would be, the advice would have to come from their attorney, but my opinion would be that that seems like a gimme, yeah, that they would probably have to
Is that
recuse.
means like when, if we want to contract, the city have to manage the property, and now we wanted to vote for that as a nonprofit, like, and the nonprofit, those 3 people will recuse themselves,
Right.
and the 2 people will be the people who decide, which is our public people.
Right. Yeah.
I really are concerned about that.
Well, I guess maybe this will ease your concern, maybe not. But the Articles of Incorporation lay out the 3 initial directors, and they're the 3 that we've mentioned, the mayor pro tem,
And the 2 staff.
Tracy and Rachel, to be informal. They do the recruiting for who those other 2 are. They need to elect those other 2. So they would likely want to be intentional and deliberate about who they are selecting. Not, that they presuppose any votes, but, you would want to probably get people who, are interested in the best, in the mission of the Housing Authority and so forth, and appreciate the value that Housing Authority staff has given all these years to the management of these properties. I guess I'd just say that.
I understand that, but you never know.
That's fair. I mean, it's ultimately, those are 2 independent members, and they
It
have
seems
to.
like Tracy tried to say something, yeah.
Yeah. No,
We're working with 2 different consultants who are advising us on this way, and I can't guarantee you the exact nonprofit setup, but what they're telling us is the nonprofit is simply the repository of the assets, and they typically don't have employees. So they're contracting with the Housing Authority, and we're managing it, but we probably will have to contract out for legal advice and maybe separate accounting. But there will be no employees with the nonprofit. They will be contracting, and the whole purpose in the bylaws and the Articles of Incorporation is to operate exclusively for the benefit of and in the support of the purpose and functions of the Housing Authority. So there's some.
That does help.
And then when we provide those assets into there, we'll have to get attorney advice. There'll be so many strings because no nonprofit, I think we talked to our consultant today, like the first tranche or whatever term they use, the 53, and maybe a RAD or a Section 8 disposition is 53 units. That's over $10 million. No nonprofit that we work with has $10 million to give to us. And so there'll be a bunch of, I think, protections, like, like when you give land to DVIP, we gave them the grant, and then they gave us, we didn't really transfer money, but we transferred property. There'll be protections about deed restrictions regarding that property. And so we'll be managing it. The Housing Authority will be managing it, and the nonprofit will have no employees if we administer it like we've seen in other housing authorities that have done this. I don't know if that helps or confuses things.
What I kind of hear, the description, and again, I'll probably know better because we'll have those documents to review for the next meeting. So what I kind of hear this is those other 2 members who are coming from the community are almost kind of that outside oversight almost, right? So we got somebody other than from outside of our city council and city staff, which the council oversees, so that's still kind of our entity. But just 2 other sets of eyeballs to kind of look over some of these decisions. Am I reading that somewhat
Yeah,
correctly?
and the 3 of us will meet. I mean, definitely, we want certain expertise that we're after, whether it's development,
Sure.
finance experience, just to have another a skill set that we're after that we want on the board.
Right. Yeah. That's kind of what I'm understanding. So it sounds like I'm not too far off.
What kind of organization? I felt like I heard Mr. Bright say we are not going to organize as a not-for-profit.
I think he said he would not look for tax exemption, if I remember. It would be a Chapter 504 nonprofit.
We don't need that. That's what he said.
Yeah, I think the idea is that it is not likely that this is an entity that would do fundraising and thus, would want to offer donors tax exemption. We would be giving them money, but we don't pay taxes. We, the city, don't pay taxes anyway, so it doesn't matter to the city.
Okay.
But, if it ever got to the point where there were a bunch of generous residents that wanted to contribute to the cause, then that board would probably reconsider and see if they can get tax exempt.
Okay.
I don't think that decision has to be made now. I think they can decide
Sure.
3 years from now.
Regardless of which organization you choose, you can still receive tax credits from the federal government if we want to. It's just private donors receiving that benefit as a donor.
Tax exempt
Yes.
status. Yeah, it's being organized under a Chapter 504 nonprofit.
Got it.
I don't know, but I still like have that something. My God.
Losing control.
Yes, about losing control, exactly. Especially when this come. But I understand that we said we start with 5, and also like everything come to mind. We have a wonderful mayor pro tem right now, but I don't know what's even going to happen in the future. If we get another person who with the 2 as a 2, they will be a majority. City doesn't have control. I don't know. I guess like all the bad things come to my mind, not the good things, but yeah, hopefully.
No, I share those concerns, and I think it is hard since we're having this whole conversation without having seen the documents. And
Yes, exactly.
what I understand from what Tracy read to us is, for the benefit of the housing authority of the city. And so, if a board member acted far outside the scope, they would be violating their fiduciary duties to the nonprofit, and there's a process for removal of them.
And that's in the bylaws.
Fiduciary duties, yeah. So that alleviates a lot of that concern for
Yes,
me.
or maybe we can still put in the bylaw, for example, like to hire the city to become the nonprofit who manage those things. All the time have to be the city or something like that, like to be put on the bylaw. I don't know. We still have time to think about those, but yeah.
Sure. And so the vision that I have is that, we'll bring something, as Tracy has mentioned previously, she's interested in getting this up and running so that the nonprofit can apply for some workforce housing tax credits, which I think is like $1 million or something, if I recall. So we're motivated. So we'll plan on bringing you something for formal action next month, and hopefully we'll have a little more of the details about how we see it go.
Next meeting.
Next meeting, I'm sorry, yeah.
Good.
Good.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, we can go home.
All right. If nothing else on that item, number 6 is council updates on assigned boards, commissions, and committees. Most of that was done at the last meeting. Any other items that people want to discuss there? Hearing none, we are adjourned. Have a good night.
Thank you.